Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Service Department News webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about TMCs, the next generation, and we'll be hearing from our panel of experts on their thoughts on the role TMCs play today, what buyers and suppliers think of those relationships, and how things have changed to fit the next generation of travel. My name is Felicity Cousins. I'm Assistant Editor of Service Department News, which is published by International Hospitality Media. I've been a business travel journalist for 18 years for both consumer and B2B publications. I was editor of Buying Business Travel and worked on Business Traveller magazine as well. This session was actually originally entitled The 21st Century TMC, but we've had quite a bit of the 21st century. So I thought it'd be better. Now technology, travel, corporate travel, and even travelers have changed and evolved to look forward rather than look back. We have two sponsors for this webinar, IMS and Corporate Housing Factory, and I'm just going to show you a couple of videos. You'll be able to see the contact information for our sponsors in the chat function of the webinar.
We are Corporate Housing Factory, your go-to company for booking temporary and extended stays in the Netherlands. Let me tell you what we do. We have about 200 service departments in the Netherlands in all major cities. Big, small, luxurious, minimalistic, modern and cosy. Our apartments are always fully furnished, weekly cleaned, provided with super speed internet, and we can offer an airport pick-up or drop-off too. Now, tell us what type of apartment you're looking for.
Thank you once again to our sponsors. This webinar will last around an hour. The first 45 minutes, we're going to chat about all things TMC and extended stay. And then there'll be 15 minutes of Q&A at the end. So if you're watching now and you think of a question during the discussion, if you could just pop it into the chat function on Zoom, then we can ask our experts at the end of the 45 minutes, and they'll have 15 minutes to kind of satisfy your questions. And then a recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone who signed up, and you'll get that in the next few days. So for a bit of context on this subject, I've looked around for some news pieces about TMCs, and here are a few which seemed a little bit relevant to the discussion. Well, we've got TakeTwo partners with Circo over here to offer a booking tool. TakeTwo launched in 2021 and has since joined Globestar TMC network and expanded rapidly. And I'm sure Spencer, who's on our panel today, will be able to talk more about this and the technology, behind that. We've also got Synergy Global Housing moving 3,000 units onto its cloud-based platform. That was just phase one. I'm sure Robert will have something to say about that. The technology aspect of travel has always been exciting and fast moving, so we're definitely going to cover that. There's a headline about who bought whom as well, and the pandemic obviously saw mergers and acquisitions and the sad demise of some people, so not people, companies. So we're going to talk about how those mergers and acquisitions happened. Last year, TakeTwo acquired Eaton Travel Group at the beginning of the year. We saw Grey Doors bought Venture in the summer, and Trip Actions also has been expanding in Europe. And yesterday, actually, Grey Doors expanded into the Australian market with travel management MP Travel. So it's got a foothold in that region. We'll talk about where TMCs see new growth and what it means for buyers and suppliers and those relationships. So this all sounds like quite positive news, but then on this page here, you can see we've got some kind of dodgy headlines like travel agency leaders fear COVID talent drain. So we're going to talk a little bit about whether we've lost, the skill set for experienced travel people and whether they've come back since the pandemic. In this Skift article, actually, there was quite an alarming figure saying that pre-COVID business travel wouldn't return until 2026, the figures. So we'll talk about that, although we do have the return of long haul kind of offering some positivity there. And finally, there's an article that was written by Service Department News about specialist TMCs and how they're finding their niche and how perhaps TMCs have had to adapt to different markets going forward as things change. So there's a few topics we are going to cover. So now it's time to introduce our panel of experts. I'm actually going to ask them to introduce themselves, and we're going to go from left to right. So first of all, I'm going to go to you, Carol. If you could introduce yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carol Fergus, and I am the Global Travel Meetings and Ground Transportation Manager for Fidelity International. Been in the industry for about 30 years and really pleased to have been invited on this panel.
Thanks, Carol. That's great. And next we have Robert over at Synergy.
Hi, Felicity. Yeah, Robert from Synergy Global Housing. We're a hybrid agent operator, service departments covering all corners of the world. Originally born out of San Francisco, but offices in most continents now around the globe, providing specialist solution service, if you like, for companies with needs for service departments, extended stay, I guess temporary housing, relocation, mobility. So pretty wide range and well connected to the relocation, RMCs, TMCs sector.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And another Robert. We have Robert from the Ascott Limited.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Robert Koncz. I'm the Key Account Director for Consortia Europe at the Ascott Limited. We are a service department chain with over 800 properties globally. I'm covering Europe and the TMC Consortia relationship.
Thanks, Robert. I can't see. I don't know if other people can see you. Is your camera on?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, maybe it's just me not being able to see. Yeah, okay. And finally, we'll come to Spencer of TakeTwo.
Yeah, thanks, Felicity. So my name's Spencer Allen. I'm the Vice President for Client Solutions at Europe at TakeTwo. As Felicity mentioned, we're a new TMC entrant into the market, launched back in September 21. We are a diversely owned full service boutique travel management company. Where we have wholly owned operations here in the UK, in North America, and in Ireland. And yeah, really sort of one of the main reasons why TakeTwo sort of entered the market was to, we recognise some of the key drivers in the industry and from our clients and sort of prospective buyers had changed. So yeah, happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you all so much, and thanks all for joining us today for today's discussion. I guess I'm going to go straight. We've got quite a lot to cover. It's obviously a huge topic, and there's so many different aspects of the relationships and the way TMCs work with suppliers and buyers and everyone else. We have got quite a few questions to go through, so I'm going to go straight in with, I guess, what challenges you think are facing TMCs at the moment. Is there a staff shortage, and is that across the board in travel with suppliers as well? Is there a drain on skill set? I'll go to you first, Spencer.
Yeah, I think the short answer to that, Felicity, is yes. I mean, there's sort of been many challenges and that obviously presented themselves over the last sort of 2 to 3 years. I think, you know, TMC and also suppliers as well, I think have been distracted, you know, certainly through 2022 with a lot of sort of structural change. You know, there's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the marketplace, as you mentioned as well. But also, you know, there's been a mass exodus of really highly trained staff that were in the industry. And I think, you know, the industry as a whole, not just TMCs, have, you know, have certainly felt the, you know, felt that. You know, I think in terms of, you know, how we approach it differently, I think, you know, the TMC, you know, traditionally is not really invested heavily in sort of training new staff and, you know, relying on sort of existing staff to, you know, sort of to multitask as well. You know, we've seen in the industry, I think that, you know, some employees become demotivated, you know, overworked and sort of a little bit demoralized. And, you know, to be honest, in the industry as a whole, not just the TMC industry, you know, I feel that hasn't really invested in people, you know, for decades. You know, and certainly, you know, here at TakeTwo, you know, we want to change that, and you know, people are very, very important, you know, to that, and you know, forming those relationships with the clients. So, you know, that has been a challenge, I think, certainly for, you know, some of the mega TMCs that have been out there. They lost a lot of staff during the pandemic, and there certainly is a bit of a staff shortage around getting, you know, highly trained agents and you know, IT staff, whoever that may be, from the travel sphere, you know, back into the industry. You know, as well, I think, you know, it's about, you know, TMCs and suppliers listening, you know, to their customers and clients as well, which I don't think maybe has been happening before too much. So, you know, certainly from a TakeTwo perspective, you know, we spotted those gaps in the market, and hence, you know, that's why we launched, you know, our full service TMC to hopefully eradicate some of those inconsistencies.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Spencer. I mean, it's quite a statement to say that you know, you think that it hasn't been, it's been for years that it hasn't been, you know, looked at the skill set. Carol, what do you think of that comment?
I think you're probably right, and I think that a lot of the skills that were there and are still there. There was a certain amount of complacency when we came back out of the pandemic, and not the realization that things had changed significantly, and that where it was left pre-pandemic, the requirements of our travelers and organizations is completely different. It's a new world, and I think that's where it's really highlighted the skill sets that we have, and the trying to change those skill sets to address some of the changes and opportunities that we now face. So they're being not prepared to do that. And then added to that, we've lost a lot of people. So we're not only having to find new talent, but we're also having to train the talent we have in the new way of working. So I absolutely agree. And I think that, you know, from where I'm sitting, I was faced with rolling out a new TMC at the start of the pandemic. And, you know, we spent a lot of time looking at our structure and what we're going to do and what we want to do. Didn't realize or didn't think for one moment that it was going to take the length of time that it ended up taking, in terms of how long the doors were shut to everybody. But then when we then go live, forgetting that TMC had not actually worked with us. You know, one booking doesn't constitute an operation. So they suddenly had to come through the door, prove themselves as a new TMC to us, bearing in mind that our stakeholders think that they've been with us for 2 years. They have, but they've done nothing. So they're having to do 2 years of catching up, proving themselves, and addressing some of the challenges that we now face. And the other thing I just wanted to add is, people forget that your resource is not just a human being, it's also your technology. And you need to really be optimizing on that and working with it, especially as we have driven people who have been working from home to use technology. So we really should be pushing and driving that and using that as an extra arm, leg, head, etc. It's a combination of the two. It's optimizing on that and working with that to support with some of that lack of resource that we have in actual individuals. So that's my kind of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And we are going to cover technology and the way that helps the sector a bit later on in the discussion. I'd like to go to Robert from Ascott, actually, just what your views are on that skill set from your point of view on your side.
As most of the industry, we are also facing some staff shortages. Our teams have done an amazing job to overcome and to compensate such a challenge. And we are utilizing on technology and looking for innovative ways to overcome such a challenging situation. One of the technology aspects I could mention, for example, various repetitive tasks, which was quite laborious and tiring. Some nights has been done by various programming equipment and the various programs doing this instead of us. But as the industry, we are continuing to have the same challenges. And we are looking to provide clear goals, vision, and to motivate individuals and creating a sense of purpose and belonging to attract more talent to the industry.
Great, thanks, Robert. And I will move on to Robert at Synergy, but I'm actually going to take you on to the next question, because I think what Robert at Ascott had just said leads quite well onto like how business travel or corporate travel is recovering since, well, you know, the last few years. It took a longer time to bounce back than leisure travel, but how's it been from your point of view, Robert, in terms of seeing things grow and move and change?
Well, I think we probably all enjoyed the bounce last year in particular. Certainly wasn't leisure. We're not particularly a leisure side of the market. So we absolutely have seen the benefit of a lot of recovery, despite markets like Asia being quite a difficult market for much of last year. Overall, we still saw significant strength. So yeah, last year was pretty phenomenal. This year probably won't be the same, right? Another year different from the last, but we seem to have said that for quite a few years and still found plenty of reasons to be optimistic. So yeah, coming off the back of such a good year last year, it was interesting. I was in Carol's there too. We were chatting in Brussels at GBTA in Brussels. Overwhelming optimism, actually, that there's still a long way to go in terms of the wider business travel recovery. I remember sitting on those STR presentations back in early 2020, trying to come up with a forecast, and they were talking about 24, 25, 26 back then. And of course, certainly some of those forecasts we've seen come forward by quite a lot, but just goes to show a lot's changed, and therefore, you know, be quite a smart guy who could tell you exactly what's going to happen in the future. But I think we're all going to enjoy the ride and certainly enjoy what we've learned in the last 3 years about how things evolve. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Trying to learn from it, and hopefully nothing like that will ever happen again. But who knows?
Felicity, can I just add very quickly to what Robert said there? I think he's absolutely right in terms of saying, there's cause for optimism, throughout the industry, not just in the TMC world, but, across the whole industry as a whole. In terms of, some of our customers have actually, they're showing sort of, transactions and figures sort of 70 to 80% of pre-pandemic levels. And I think that does change, into certain respects in regards to, what industry you're in as well. I know obviously Carol's in the sort of financial services industry, and, people are always going to want to meet people face to face. And, that's critical. Even now we're seeing that, as we move out of the pandemic, that, the events market and stuff as well is really, really picking up, because, companies haven't really had the opportunity to get together over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years. So, that's definitely an area of the market in terms of that's growing very much. And yeah, I think, there's definitely optimism there, but we're not out of the woods yet, so to speak.
No, we're not. And actually, because the traveller and the traveller kind of mindset has changed, it kind of nicely brings us into like extended stay and serviced apartments, how they've been used since the pandemic in business travel. What have you seen with your bookings and your deals with the extended stay sector?
Is that to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think, it was an area of the industry that was growing even before COVID. And and certainly now, we have our own sort of, preferred list of sort of long stay and suppliers that we work with. You've even got the likes of people like Sonder and, Airbnb as well, that are sort of, getting into the corporate market as well. And we're seeing that certainly in the US a little bit more than here in Europe. But absolutely, certainly for us, it's an area that is growing, tremendously. We have independent relationships with certain suppliers, and we work with, for example, Synergy, as one of our customers, use them to have a direct relationship with them, and we kind of piggyback off that and assist them with their requirements. But I think as well, the whole Carol mentioned in terms of the whole work ethic has changed. A lot of people are working from home or doing hybrid working.
Yeah.
And I think, that extends to when they travel as well, particularly if they're staying more than 2 or 3 nights. They get used to that home environment, the ability to have that flexibility where potentially a sort of full service hotel wouldn't provide that. And sometimes they could be a little bit sterile. So absolutely, we've definitely seen a big, uptick in that, and I'm sure that will continue through the rest of the year.
Thanks, Spencer. And Robert from Ascott, what are your thoughts on that in terms of your bookings and your extended stay offerings?
In terms of we have seen a significant rebound in last year, and we remain very optimistic for 2023. But we have seen business travelers are staying longer than before they used to. So we therefore expect a longer length of stays, probably fewer trips, but definitely longer lengths of stays. As a service department, I think we are perfectly adapted for longer lengths of stays. We have all the facilities of the hotels. We have also the facilities of the apartments, giving you the flexibility, for example, a kitchen to cook, and also with the opportunity to save you on your restaurant expenses. We have spacious studios, apartments, giving you the flexibility to really feel like you are home. And in terms of clients during the lockdown and during the pandemic, what we discovered, we have new clients discovering our service departments. And these clients, they are not coming back to us. Probably these clients might have been from the hotel industry, from the hotels in the past. And we have seen a rebound on these clients coming and returning to us. Also, another observation that some of the hotels, they started to install kitchenettes in some of their rooms. So probably they realized that we are taking market share from the hotels, where the service department, but their space remains limited. In terms of long stays for the Ascott, for us, we have always been focusing on long stays, so this is not really new to us. For long stays, I'm talking about 30 days or more. In terms of the price, we don't really see a major impact or any big changes from the longer stay point of view.
Okay, that's interesting. Thanks, Robert. Thanks very much. I'm going to move on to the next question because refocusing back onto the TMC as a kind of, the mainstay of one-stop shop for all things travel related. They do data capture, they do traveler security, reporting on compliance to loyalty and leverage with suppliers. Was the pandemic an opportunity for TMCs to get back to basics, or has their remit actually become more complex? I'm going to put that to Robert at Synergy.
Sure. And back to basics. I think the customer will decide what the direction that the TMC is going to take, and it's too simple to sort of just say back to basics and simplify what we do. It's obviously become a much more complicated world in terms of travel. Certainly for a little while was so complicated we weren't doing it. TMCs respond to the market. They'll either widen the net and try and gather up as much service and consultation as they possibly can, or dive into specialist markets, whether that's sector specific or like us, just an understanding of more unique parts of the market. So we can all see customers that have different needs by nature of their business, whether pharma, manufacturing, energy and gas, they've got different expectations anyway, and TMCs and the supply chain are there to sort of fulfill those needs as they come along. So I think there's always room for generalists, and there's certainly plenty of room for specialists in a big market like ours.
Good answer. And I would have said also that maybe meetings and events has become maybe something TMCs are kind of piggybacking on as well. Would you say that, Carol?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually use with our TMC, we're working with them on putting together the meetings and events program as well, albeit not all of it, but a percentage of it we've put under our TMC. And in response to the actual complexity, the TMCs we are expecting a lot more from them. You know, most of my business is practically with, well, nearly all of it, apart from one location, is with one TMC. That comes with its risks, because obviously I have got that one-stop shop, and if they go out of business, I don't know what I'm going to do, probably get on and book everything myself. However, that said, the reason we went down that route is because for me, it's an easier way of managing my vendors. I also use the opportunity for them to use third-party providers, so they have those relationships on my behalf. And I look at it as though they have the expertise and the knowledge to deal with that much better than I could, and they have a better leverage. What I would say to that is that, you know, one size doesn't fit all. And you know, as Robert said, it's the TMCs will very much go in the direction of the organisation that they're working with, and if that's something that organisation is looking to do, so that's their strategy. So for Fidelity, one of the things that we very much do work with our procurement is the number of vendors we bring in. You know, it's very heavily monitored. They don't want us to have hundreds and hundreds of vendors for the same category or industry. So this is an opportunity to kind of put it all into one place. You manage your reporting, your dating, your technology and everything under one umbrella. But I think we need to also be very mindful of the relationships that those TMCs have on your behalf. And, you know, we make the assumption that they're the experts, but, you know, in some instances, I've found that that relationship is not as tight or as strong as I would probably like it to be had I been managing that relationship. So I think it's not just about having that complexity and the arms and legs of the TMC. It's also taking it that step further and saying, you're managing on my behalf. However, this is my expectations from those third-party providers, and not just leave it to thinking that you're going to get the right service and etc. So it is complex. TMCs are taking on a lot more. We are a classic example of that happening, because that's the model that we have. But I also think that we can't sit back and say they're the experts, let them get on with it, because it's not quite as easy as that.
No, it's a complex issue. I mean, would you say that a cultural fit is like kind of almost top of the agenda when you're choosing a TMC?
Absolutely. They really need to understand what your culture is and what your drivers are, what your strategy is. And also not just say, once we've signed on the dotted line, this is tablets of stone. You have to be flexible, and both parties need to recognize that. I think there also needs to be a lot of visibility, and when we talk partnership, really mean it, because a lot of the time as a buyer, we sometimes forget that if you don't tell them, they don't know. They can't read what's on your mind, and they can't support you if you are not transparent and share. It's really important to do that. I see my TMCs and all my suppliers as being my eyes and ears, and they can't be my eyes and ears and bring that quality into my program if I'm not transparent and open with them. So I think it's really important to do that as a buyer, but it has to work both ways in order for you to have that whole cultural alignment.
Great, that's a great answer, and that bring me to Spencer. Actually, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be honest, Felicity, I mean, Carol's absolutely spot on there in terms of you know, the relationship between the travel management company and the client. You know, it works both ways. You know, I see it as a joint relationship, and it's about growing and managing that program together. You know, in terms of how we can provide you know, great service and confidence and trust. You know, is really, really key. I think, you know, prior to the pandemic, I think a lot of sort of frontline TMC staff were kind of seen as, or kind of actually became sort of order takers, so to speak. You know, and I think TMCs have had to change their approach, and you know, again, certainly at TakeTwo, that's really in our mindset, and really why we launched the business back in September 21. Again, I think, you know, before the pandemic, you know, the main key driver, certainly for procurement, was around cost. But also now, you know, it's much more complex. There's much more other key stakeholders involved within the business. So, you know, the likes of HR, risk, IT, security, you know, so, and it's all about a purposeful travel, you know, ensuring that you have those relationships and that trust with the company, that you can have those discussions with the travel manager or the procurement manager, so to speak. And I think, these are the new key drivers in the travel program now. And, of course, you've got, you can throw the sustainability piece into the mix as well. That's something that is, a huge topic, not just for travel management companies, but, for buyers and for clients. And again, it's working with the TMC to make sure that you're traveling wisely, you're making the right decisions in terms of, do you have to travel? Although obviously we don't want to cut down the number of transactions, it's empowering people to make those right decisions. And that's 100% important when you're in a relationship with a client.
And have you seen RFPs coming in with much more sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been extremely successful. We've had a lot of RFPs that have come in the last 6 months, and yeah, absolutely. I think sustainability risk is right up there. Certainly in the top sort of 2 or 3 wants and needs of that. And I think as well, we'll come on to the tech piece in a minute, but I think, a lot of travel management companies now have kind of had to look at their ecosystem in terms of providing, as Carol mentioned, the technology for the customers to be able to make those right choices and informed. But saying that, tech will never replace the human touch, that high level of service. And again, at TakeTwo, that's really what we strive and try and differentiate between us and maybe some of the mega agencies that are out there. So it's a combination of everything, but trust is 100% key in any relationship.
Great, thanks, Spencer. I'd like to talk to Robert at Synergy actually about how agent and operators such as Synergy Global Housing work with corporate travel managers in these capacities, and how those relationships are evolving or changing. Have you noticed, how long have you been with Synergy for, Robert? Sorry, is it a couple of years now?
Gosh, not yet. It probably feels like it to the team. You'd have to let them answer that question. It's approaching a year actually, but obviously I'm a lifer as far as travel and hospitality goes, having run rooms certainly for the 5 years before coming to Synergy. Look, we're a service provider. That's what we do as supplier and operator. Service departments have never been more prominent than they have been over the last 3 years. We like to think the industry's been strengthening for a long time, but the last 3 years certainly shone a light on the value and the purpose that we serve to a more complicated world. So obviously we've been doing this for 20 years, but all of a sudden we're in a sector that's really come to the front. We bring experience, we bring solutions, and we're there to support the customer and the TMC relationship. That's our piece of the puzzle. So as long as we're strengthening those partnerships and we're providing solutions that meet the customer's need, then whatever hat you're wearing as operator, agent or supplier, you're serving a purpose. You're doing a good job.
And have you seen those relationships evolve over the since the pandemic? Have they changed?
With customers' needs, obviously they've changed. So the world's changed a little bit. There's certainly a lot of talk about less trips, longer trips, etc., and that certainly plays into the sector that we serve. And long may that continue, because that's what we've been doing really well. We're on a journey, right? So everyone's spoken about what life before and life during, and we're all trying to work out what life looks like after a pandemic. And certainly we do a lot of work in, as I mentioned, Asia before, and that's a part of the world which is only just gathering its momentum. We saw literally in the last 2 weeks China trying to open the borders, and that's caused some sensitivities with that. So there's a long way to go. Return to office hasn't happened in any significant shape or form. It's so varied. We're all trying to work out what hybrid working means, and when we work out what that means for our companies and how we're going to move around in future, then we'll continue to find where service departments can take more share out of the wider travel accommodation sector. Certainly the last 3 years would suggest we've got a big part to play.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it? That's what all the figures are saying. Thanks, Robert. Thanks very much. I'm going to move on actually to the technology, because in every way, technology moves things forward. So what do you guys think will be the game changer in the next few years for travel management and technology? What technology is going to change your jobs and your life? Who shall I put that to? Let me choose. How about Robert at Ascott?
Sure. I think going forward, and it's going to be a big game changer, is the artificial intelligence will be a game changer in the future with the traveler's recognition, a recommendation to the choice of options for business travelers, which is now done manually and on several fragmented platforms. And I think right now it's consolidating experience, conversion, and integration of content. It helped us in the past to go through various challenges. Like, for example, if you look at the GDS part, GDS content before and now with pictures, and then, for example, pictures are now visible for clients and travelers as well. In terms of game changer, probably if I would have a dream for the future, maybe to have one system which will allow me to travel door to door under one platform without the need to have several apps with my flight, hotel, loyalty card details, taxi requirements, restaurant preferences, etc.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I wonder how long that will take. Thank you. I was actually going to mention the GDS in terms of booking extended stay, and I was talking to Spencer about it a little bit earlier. Spencer, what are your thoughts about technology in the sector? And
yeah,
how,
I mean, I think, as Robert mentioned, I think there's definitely going to be less reliance on the GDS, and potentially more of a sort of adoption of more sort of modular style sort of tech and sort of technology in the future as we move forward as well. I think that there's definitely going to be a lot more new startups that are coming into the tech side of things, and we've seen a number of those that have come on board, and I think customers are looking for sort of next gen type technology that's going to not be a hindrance to them, so they'll be able to sort of do their jobs very, very quickly. For example, at Take-Two, we're kind of agnostic when it comes to tech, so it's about creating the best fit and the best solution for that particular customer. So I think definitely some startups coming into the market as well. Less reliance on the GDS, and as I think there has been a lot of out-of-date sort of business travel systems, and what we have seen is TMCs trying to create their own sort of ecosystem, so to speak. I know that's a term that's used quite often, but it's about matching the right tech for the individuals that can do that, whether that be through an app or through a self-booking tool, a creation of a portal, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think there's definitely some changes, and tech is only going to get better and only going to get more advanced as we move through the next couple of years, and
hopefully make our life easier. And Carol, yeah, exactly. What would make your life easier as a buyer in terms of technology that TMCs can work with you?
Well, I wrote 3 words as I was listening to everybody: quick, slick, seamless. That's kind of what's going to make my life easy. We can't hide away from it. So any kind of organization that thinks that they can get away with not getting people to use the technology, that's not going to happen. It's moving really quickly. And, no sooner, it's like when you get a phone, no sooner you get that lovely phone and you think, I've got the latest model, another one comes out and it's got other features and other things. I think that's the nature of all our lives, both in the leisure and the corporate world. So I think we have to embrace it and recognize that these things are happening, it's changing. It's then looking at your own culture and organization saying, okay, what's the appetite and what can we do here as a company, and what's the fit? And I also think it's really important that we are recognizing, especially with the younger generation, that that's how they live their life. Everything they do is either through their mobile phones or their apps, or etc. And they're going to be expecting a lot more than that. They're going to be challenging and saying, well, why do I have to do this manually when I book my personal travel, it's all on my phone, it's on my laptop, I press the button, gives me this, I've got right choices. So for me, what would make my life easier is all the verticals getting their heads together and saying, as Robert's world of technology from Ascott, that's what I mean, in terms of let's bring it all together. so that end to end, from the moment you make the decision to make that booking, you've got an integrated central system that everyone understands, they can use, it's very easy, you've got the navigation. So I think, if we had the ideal world, it would be to bring everyone together and have that. But for me, technology is the future. And that's what people are going to expect, and that's what's going to rule our lives when it comes to things like booking travel. Having said that, Spencer did say there's no technology can't replace the whole face-to-face, one-to-one talking to a person as opposed to a computer or an app. And we all know how infuriating that can be when they go, press 1 for this, press 1 for that, and you've pressed 99 buttons and you can't speak to anybody. But there has to be that balance. But technology is definitely the driver in the future. And for me, just make it as quick, slick and seamless as we possibly can.
I like that. I like that catchphrase. Some technology guy is going to be, or woman's going to be making their notes now. Robert, at Synergy, what would make your life easier going forward in terms of technology and bookings and everything like that?
I think Carol's just written the marketing strapline for the next 2 years for sure. We've been on our own journey at Synergy. You highlighted on one of the clips and on one of the first slides, we moved some of the business onto a new platform last year. Internationally, we moved the whole of international operations onto a new platform at the end of last year, and that's very much a journey nowhere near the end for us, as far as trying to peer around the corner as to what exactly it needs to the finished article needs to look like. Service department world's been notoriously disconnected and not transactional in terms of the complexity of mobility and relocation. It's not something that was quite easily commoditized. So we've not found it easy as a sector to just move everything online in a simple form. It was just too much consideration in the transaction. That's not to say it can't progress. So the point of the journey that we're on is to try and find a way of moving our own operations, vast supply chain, and put that onto a platform that can be more easily distributed with partners like our TMC and relocation partners that we work so closely with. So absolutely a journey, but one that needs to be cracked. Now, how much all of that ends up in an app on a phone, that might not be the whole solution. I think we've established a reputation as if we're offering a personalized service, specialist service, and that's not something you can just tick boxes with. So I don't think we don't want to lose the spirit of what makes us work as an organization by bottling it all up in an app. But you can't bury your head in the sand either and just think that's gonna fix everything because you're great at what you do. You actually have to have the technology to work across multiple time zones and multiple currencies and multiple cultures and multiple languages. It's complicated, but good fun.
Yeah, that is complicated, isn't it? There's a lot to think about there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. We actually are getting towards the Q&A session. I just wanted to ask where we think new growth will come from in the future for TMCs. Will they be taking other TMC business, or will increased number of travellers be using them? Who shall I put that to? Spencer?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think, in terms of growth, we mentioned about M&As and mergers and acquisitions in the market. I think that's definitely going to continue. I think, our model at TakeTwo is really to try and grow organically rather than sort of through acquisitions. And I think, in terms of just working with your clients and prospects to sort of flush out in terms of what's actually required. And we mentioned M&E as well. That's particularly for us at TakeTwo, we've seen a huge uptick in that in the last sort of 3 months, certainly as we're coming into 23 as well. So I see that as an area of continued growth. And then it's also around sort of diversification of products and services that that we provide as well. You know, again, it goes back to, you know, the sort of one-stop shop that Carol was talking about earlier around, you know, TMCs having to sort of diversify and make sure that they have the right solutions to their, you know, for their customers, not just from a technology standpoint, but, you know, that if they speak to somebody that, you know, they're going to get all of the answers straight away and do that. So, you know, I think it's about looking at areas where we can, you know, we can grow the business. But, you know, I think, you know, as Robert mentioned, you know, we are coming out of the pandemic, we are seeing an uptick in transactions coming through. You know, we've got certain industries that are, you know, performing almost the same as what they were pre-pandemic. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you know, M&E I see as a really big area that's continuing to grow.
Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it? Thank you, Spencer.
Okay.
I think we'll probably go on to the questions from the audience, if everyone's happy with that, unless any of the panel would like to add anything to the points in the discussion that we've had so far that you don't feel like you've had your say. Everyone's all right?
Okay.
Okay. One question actually that has been around for a long time, because I remember this question from 2007. That's very specific, but I do remember it. Are TMCs the piggy in the middle? And obviously, I mean between buyer and suppliers. So, Carol, is that true today?
I think if you look at my model, they probably are for me, because they come to me and then obviously take back my requirements with the third parties that they work with and within their own organisation. So yeah, I guess they could be seen as the piggy in the middle, but it really depends on the model you've got, because you could be working with a TMC but own the relationships. So it's then going to the TMC and saying, this is how I'd like you to operate based on working with these suppliers. So I think it really depends on the structure and the model you have that determines whether the TMC would be perceived as the piggy in the middle. And for my model, looking at it, an outsider looking in, they would say, yes, your TMC is the piggy in the middle, because you have that one-stop shop and they manage all your relationships with your third-party providers. So that's kind of my answer to that. It depends on the model.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Robert, from Synergy.
I guess that just depends on whether you're TMC or your intermediary. We act as an agent in that sense, whether they're doing a good job for you, right? And that doesn't sound a particularly complimentary term. So if they're actually solving your needs, then they're doing a good job. Probably don't look like piggy in the middle, but if they're not listening particularly well and not necessarily finding the answers you needed, then you're probably going to refer to them as the piggy in the middle. Most of us are here to do a really good job and serve a purpose and go home having done a good job for a customer. So I think it's probably a somewhat unfair term, because there's a lot of great service and a lot of great specialist advice and experience that you are engaging. Well, I would hope that's what Carol would say. I
wouldn't actually see it as a derogatory term, because in terms of the model I have, I've structured it that way because it works for me. But then people can look at it as a derogatory term, but they would only look at it that way if the supplier in particular sees it as a barrier to the corporates, and they don't believe that their services and what they can offer is being shared with the company. But if it's a good model, and that's why I went back at the very beginning, I said it's about the relationships that the TMCs has with those third-party providers. If it's a good relationship and both parties are getting something out of that, then they would never be seen as a piggy in the middle. So I don't actually see it as a derogatory term from where I'm sitting, but if the relationship doesn't work, then absolutely the suppliers that work with them would see them as a barrier to getting into that organisation. Yeah. So I'm with you, Robert, Ali.
Okay, so let's ask Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, I think both the guys there have sort of explained it very, very well. Now, I mean, I don't see TMCs as the piggy in the middle, so to speak. I think, Again, Carol touched on that earlier. It's about trust and about transparency, and that's really, really key. It's a joint relationship between, the client or the corporate, the travel management company, and the associated suppliers that within that supply chain. Ultimately, why do corporates employ a TMC to do that? It's around control and compliance. It's making sure that we deliver on the travel policy, that we suggest cost savings, and suggestions to make the travel policy and their travel program successful. And ultimately, as a TMC, that's what we're judged on, and that's what's really, really important. So, I don't see us as in the middle. I see it as a continuous improvement cycle, really, between the supplier, the TMC, and the client. And if we're not all in it together and we're not communicating together, and communication is key as in any facet of business, then the program is not going to be successful. So you can add in all the wonderful things around service and technology and everything else as well. But, again, Rob mentioned it, if you don't get the basics right from the start and have an agreement in terms of what the vision is and what you want to achieve through the life of the contract, then you might as well give up.
No, I agree. And I think as we were saying about technology, what we all want is something seamless and that works. And it's the same with those relationships and that communication between you all. You need that, don't you? Otherwise, you're working against the system and it's just going to cause bumps in the road, really. I've got another a question I will read out. It's come through on my WhatsApp. Are you giving a role or any role for a centralized contact center to support customers and employees when traveling? Now, it doesn't say who that's addressed to, so who would like to take that?
I can start. We don't have one centralized contact center, and we operate all time zones around the world, and there's a reason for that. I mean, I think you mentioned a couple of the mergers and acquisitions that have happened recently. That's all about, reach and service, and that's what it's all about. That's certainly how we operate. So I don't think it's likely to just sit one 24-hour contact center in Florida anytime soon.
Right, thanks, Robert. Anyone else like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Robert, I think that is the best way to approach things. I mean, at Take-Two, we have a kind of follow the sun philosophy around that. You can speak to an individual agent, whether it be about technology or about an individual trip, any time of the day. We don't outsource that to any third providers to provide that. And, I think people, they still want in-country servicing. We have the ability to be able to hub a solution, for example, in Europe, out of our sort of our operation in Ireland. So if that was wanted. So it really depends on the needs of the customer. But no, I think, people want to speak to individuals in their own market if they can.
Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah, I think as a buyer, can I just quickly add to that? I think as a buyer, and I think, what Robert and Spencer have said is absolutely right. And you do want to speak to the individuals in the market. Where it actually comes into play is out of hours. If you know that you've got a booking and you can go wherever you are and it's got a 24/7 support, and that's more about your systems and technology. So they're able to log on, see that booking and support from wherever in the world. Absolutely. And that's where I see it really comes into its own. But we do want to have some local support in terms of, within business hours, but out of hours, that model, really comes into play.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks for that. I think we're at the end of the session and we'll be wrapping it up. So I just wanted to thank all of you for your input today. It's been really interesting hearing your insights and all your experience and expertise. And thanks for, sharing that with all of us and making my job a little bit easier. I think we're going to finish and say goodbye, but there'll be a couple of minutes towards the end of this where you'll be able to ask questions and share contact details in the in the Q&A bit at the side of the webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit about the next webinar another webinar coming up, which is going to be hosted by George Sell, our editor-in-chief, Rising Stars, Future Industry Leaders Round the Table. That's going to be a good one. That's on February the 16th at 2 p.m. So don't miss that one. There'll be more information on that coming up as well. So yeah, try and sign up for that one. And I'm waiting for the next slide. Recharge. Okay, so this is next week, and this is our really amazing event where you can network and do all sorts of things in Lisbon, 23rd and 24th January. Still not too late to sign up, actually. Look at all the people that are going to be there. And there are custard tarts in Portugal. So I think it's a good place to go.
Sounds good.
And yes, let's not forget the Service Department Awards. Actually, the entry period is now open, so you can enter. And this is an industry highlight. And the awards are in May, and it's a great night. And that's when everyone's going up there to receive their awards. So don't forget to enter, and make sure you get online there. The details will also be in the chat function of this webinar. And if you want to work with us, there's Katie, my colleague. You can get in touch with Katie. She will answer any questions about opportunities and working with IHM. And that leaves me just to say thanks again to our speakers and our sponsors. It's been a great session, and I look forward to speaking again with some of you again soon. Okay.
Felicity, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
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 Thanks, everyone.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our full multimedia brands, boutique hotel news, service apartment news, short-term rentals, and urban living news lead to respective sectors with breaking news, comment, trends, and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes, and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to create a hospitality and real estate media business that provided expert opinion, comment, and no-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 visits across our website each month, 41,000 on our email database across all the sectors, and over 52,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently, and we make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet with IHM. Contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.